hello, everybody. And the red light goes on. As Ozzy Osbourne likes to say, that means that it's time to begin. And here we are, Mike's Movie Podcast, a rare instance where we're having these in back-to-back weeks. And, typically this is Mike's Movie Podcast featuring Evan with special guest Adam. But in the spirit of the movie Tar, we're actually going to open up auditions to see who is actually first in line for this as well.
Okay. Shouldn't we be behind a curtain?
Yeah, that's the joke. So we are watching though. We're discussing the movie Tar today, and this is very notable because this is a very special recording. We are on site. Evan is at a Starbucks.
Woo!
So I was telling these guys rushed me. This was not my idea, and usually I just kind of get dragged along for the ride on these movies. But I figured, they all did. I really wanted to do Whale with my friend Sarah last week. I thought that went really well, and so to provide compensation, I'm doing this, which it's nothing against the movie itself. Just the timing wasn't ideal, and I was explaining to my co-hosts that I didn't manage my time properly this morning and found myself at the Starbucks working when I should have been home watching the movie, doing my real homework. And so I had to watch the movie in its entirety, which is close to 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, so
I've been at this Starbucks for close to 6 hours, and we're about to do another 2 right now. So I want you to just think for a minute. And I'm also, the Starbucks is full. Everybody is here, so are
you going to be able to swear? Are you going to say a swear word around other people?
I don't plan on swearing, but I do plan on making some comments that may not sit well with some of the younger students.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
well, I just want to say, Evan. So you talk about time management and you talk about the length of the movie. So just to follow up from our conversation from last week, it does seem like the length of movies is a germane talking point.
No, because I had a very specific reason for mentioning the length that had nothing to do with the film itself. It was just my time management. That was the whole point. So I don't think there was a contradiction. Although I just have one thing. I don't really understand the movie. I'm not smart enough to get it. Somebody's going to have to explain the last scene to me. We can get into that. But I like that, and this is the inside baseball. So some feedback we got on our last episode kind of echoes some things that we've heard in the past about, hey, it's Mike's Movie Podcast. We love Mike. There's not enough Mike. Too much Adam and Evan fomenting and bickering. And so we had a text thread where Adam and I encouraged Mike to bring out his quote, big dick energy, which I feel like the main character of this movie was doing the entire time. So I couldn't help but think about that. Like, oh, this is perfectly symbolic of what we want Mike to do on his podcast.
And then we're going to catch Mike having sex with a younger student, and we're going to ruin his life.
He's been doing it with the interns for Mike's Movie Podcast.
Yeah. Well, and that is in fact a text thread conversation, and I will say we the whole dynamic between Tar and the students there. This is completely different circumstances, of course, but there is, I guess, in some ways, some overlap with the Whale as well.
So me and Evan are musicians in the orchestra at the symphony, and you're here telling us what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. We wait for your hand to start time.
It's the right hand is all about time. And I know that one quick thing. I know that talking about logistics of recording podcasts is not the best content.
Yes,
but Evan, if you do you have like Zoom on your phone or something? Like, it would be easier for you to like have a different location. I feel like Evan, like Adam and I could keep the show.
I like seeing him like this. I'm enjoying this already. You can see the fear in his eyes. You can see him making eye contact with other patrons of Starbucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's fine. I'm subdued. So far,
okay.
Nobody seems to be
going to help make it more of a Mike-centric podcast.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I will say, we want to make it more of a Mike-centric podcast. I have some notes here, and I think we can go through the notes here. I'll start up.
I got nothing. I'm empty-handed.
Yeah. This is, and I will say, I just want to keep before I get into my notes, want to get to more logistics for a second. Adam, I don't know where you are right now. This is a different setting that you
I'm
have.
upstairs. Here, let me.
Yeah.
Izzy is using the room we're usually in, so I don't know if you can see out here. This is the front of the house, and here let's go check on the chickens real quick from the other window up here.
Yeah, and it's good to see that the windows are still there and they didn't disappear.
Can you see them? Can you see the fucking chickens? Where are they? Over there. There you go. Chickens.
Wow.
The chickens are always listening when we podcast.
Yeah.
But no, I'm upstairs because Izzy's doing stuff in the room I usually use it in. I kind of enjoy having a different setup.
You know, me and Evan didn't plan this, that we would be in alternate locations, but it's a good idea.
You got to be spontaneous when you're in the entertainment.
Yeah, you know, keep it jazzy, get the improv going.
It's all, well, yeah, it's all, I mean, it's all about the time signatures, right? You know, it's all about the time signatures.
Yeah, we're doing this one is 6-8.
So I want to start off with one thing real quick, because this is something where when I was watching the movie. So first of all, I went to the SIF Egyptian Theater. I have not been there in quite a long time, so it's still the SIF Egyptian Theater in Capitol Hill, so still alive and kicking, which is good. Which can't be said about a lot of theaters in Seattle.
I was gonna say, I heard.
Yeah, because the Regal Meridian 16 downtown is closing, and looking at recent years, like Cinerama is closed. Don't know if that's ever opening up again. You have the Harvard exit, which is closed. You have the landmark 45th in Wallingford, which is closed. Pacific Place, the theater, that mall is like pretty dead. I mean, it's like Grand Avenue Mall style. So who knows what's going to be happening there. So I have some concerns about like the future of movie theaters. Oh, and also the Grand Illusion Theater in a University District, that building was sold.
That's what I was going to say. I just saw that today.
So yeah, so there are definitely some problems.
Hard time for theaters.
Yeah.
Mike, my memory, I only went to the SIF Egyptian a couple times. I remember that being possibly the nicest theater besides Cinerama in Seattle. That was definitely one of the nicer spots. It's a nice big screen, old theater, well maintained.
Yeah, no, I know that's true, and that still holds up too. And I like that it has some like old timey elements where it has like the stage on it, which of course where the guy had his Abe Lincoln rap to get him.
Was that there? That was the SIF Egyptian?
That was a SIF, yeah.
I blocked that. I have positive associations that I blocked that one.
Yeah. But that is where I watched it. But to get back to my notes is so something I have observed as a bit of a movie buff is that some of the older golden era movies, they have the credits at the beginning of them, and then at the end of the movie, instead of having credits, it just says like the end, and that's like the end of that. And this movie, I was watching it, and I'm like, oh wow, there's a credits sequence at the beginning of the movie here. Which I thought was unique. I read some reviews, and now I was thinking, like, were those actual credits for this movie, or was that like some way of somehow related to the plot of the movie, and I just missed it?
I mean, it's the real credits for that movie, but it is notable that they are in front. And I believe, if I remember right, in addition to putting the full credits up front, it also has what would usually be the roles that get relegated to the end of the credits first, like it's doing reverse credits at the start, which is undercutting the traditional hierarchy structure of the power system of the Hollywood movie studios. I want to know about the gaffer. I want to see the gaffer's name up front. Who's the best boy? Who catered for the extras?
What's the gaffer?
What Starbucks did they go to?
Yeah,
got like a gopher.
Yeah.
Best boy? I think best boy is an electrical lighting job. I don't know what it actually is. Gaffer's taping
the cords to the floor.
Yeah,
taping the dicks to keep it
There
down.
were very few in this movie, and those there were small.
That's an astute observation. I'm glad you noticed that.
Yeah. So all right. So I guess let's open up the floor of this discussion here. And Adam, I will start with you because I know that you have been kind of chomping at the bit to talk about this movie for a while. I know that you don't have notes, but again, a true film critic doesn't need notes. So when you've been just kind of thinking about this and just like, like waiting at the gates just to kind of like let her rip on this movie, like what is like the top thought observation part of the movie that you have been waiting this entire time to really dive into?
Well, following up on last week's episode, I know this will be very exciting for you guys and fans of the show. I have a long-standing tradition of not quantifying or ranking things, but I think I said I consider Tar to be the best movie that came out last year. And beyond that, I wanted to say, before I say what I'm going to say, what do you guys think? Just broad, big picture, comparative, qualitative, The Whale versus Tar. Which movie do you think is a better movie? And then I'll say what I'm working up to. Let's start with Mike, the host.
Okay, well, geez, this is a good question. Like qualitatively, which one do I think is a better movie? And I'm going to repeat your question.
And then if it's a different answer, which you enjoyed more, which is totally fine if they're different answers.
Wow, I do not have an immediate answer, but I will say with the I mean, one thing that I haven't considered, which would inform that, is like thinking about like there are like different movies that are trying to accomplish different things, and like having those types of comparisons. So you kind of like who's a better athlete, like Michael Jordan or Tom Brady, where it's like they play different sports.
Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would make that argument, and he also plays defense, so you have an argument there, but. I would say though, so it's looking at from the quality, and I guess what I would be thinking about would just be the overall like scope and like the overall like scope of the movie and the complexity of the story and whatnot. I would have to go with Tar on this, and part of it is that you have multiple you have multiple locations. You have like more, it's a bit more dynamic, which. Versus The Whale, which is which is basically a play that was made into a movie. So I would go with Tar there, but it's something I'd have to. As I think.
You also say you enjoyed Tar more in terms of personal enjoyment.
Yeah, well, so in terms of personal enjoyment, I think with Tar, I had I would say yes, because I feel like the final hour of the movie when things like really started to unravel, like I was like really getting into that, and I was very much absorbed when that happened. I would say I probably like had a more of a stronger emotional reaction to The Whale than I did. I feel like The Whale, I think I probably responded to a bit more on like kind of a more like deeper level, but like kind of from looking at Tar from a more from a perspective of like the ride the movie takes you on. I would say that one feels like that one. And I'm going to say one last thing too, as I'm talking about this, I'm finding myself like getting self-conscious, like I am like at a New Yorker forum, and I'm like talking about movies as well. So
that's good. That's how we should all be operating, as if we were speaking to an audience of thousands.
Yeah, and I do have a couple notes related to that.
I haven't even gotten to mine yet. I need Evan to answer my questions, and then I'm going to answer the first thing you asked me. I needed you guys to say the answer first before I say what I'm going to say. Now, Evan.
Wait, what's the question?
The question is for you could be twofold question. Which movie do you think is a better movie as a guy who likes to rank movies, and which movie did you enjoy more, just strictly between The Whale and Tar? And then I'll say my answer to Mike's initial question.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is going to echo something Mike said, but to a certain extent, I don't think it's a good question because it's like no. I mean, this is why the quantitative rating system is good, because you can say, like I can say, for instance, both of these are 4-star or 4 cheeseburgers. However, what I enjoy varies day to day. Just like you wouldn't ask somebody what's better, lemonade or barbecue ribs.
Lemonade.
It's like right now I would rather have a lemonade, but you ask me at 10 o'clock tonight, I'm probably going to take the ribs. So similarly, I thought they were both really good. It's harder I will say, obviously, my opinion about Tar should be downweighted since I watched it half-assedly in a Starbucks.
Sure.
Like literally finished 10 minutes ago. So it's got an
still digesting it.
Well, yes. So I will say the big difference between the two. So The Whale was something that I enjoyed in real time. Tar doesn't quite work that way. And the last movie I watched that had this effect was The Power of the Dog, where while I was watching it, it felt kind of onerous and arduous, and I didn't really find myself enjoying it. But even as the minutes elapse here, I am realizing the quality that I did actually know.
What happened over there?
It,
Where's that loud sound?
well, there are various espresso machines going,
Oh yeah, you're
chairs being
so
dragged
my
across
answer to
the
Mike's
floor.
question, as you may remember, as all our listeners remember from the last episode, I was kind of shocked and taken aback that everybody but me loved The Whale so much. And what I was going to say, as someone who doesn't usually get into like the ratings game and quantifying or comparing things, I definitely think that anyone that thinks The Whale is a better movie than Tar is an idiot. Full stop.
But you predictably will just take the against the grain viewpoint on any movie related question.
Popular, critically acclaimed movie. I only saw it after it was already a very successful critically acclaimed movie.
I know, but everybody likes The Whale. Everybody
in Seattle because it's such a successful movie.
At the same time, so is The Whale, and many people.
The Whale came out 2 weeks ago. Tar came out 6 months ago.
What does that have to do with anything?
If it stays in theaters, that means it's selling tickets, meaning it's a popular, successful movie. The Whale will not be playing anywhere in the amount of time from when Tar came out to now.
Which one was more talked about and talked about in the context of awards and things
Tar,
like that? I don't think so.
Tar, and I will predict Tar will win more actual awards. 100%, hands down.
Fine. It's funny to me that a person who doesn't want to quantify the movies is so quick to. I mean, you are basically. I mean, I guess you made this observation yourself. Why pit the movies against?
Because I was taken aback that everyone liked The Whale so much. I didn't expect it, and I found it shocking. And I was reeling. I'm still reeling from that shock.
Everybody likes The Whale. Everybody. I mean, everybody who's seen it in my circles.
I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to participate in call out culture. But someone else who saw The Whale and knows all of us and asked me how the podcast went, and I was like, well, I was kind of shocked. Everybody but me loved it. Said like, wow. They were like, are your friends idiots?
That was just
Izzy. Absolutely not. I will not have my friends slandered like that.
Izzy was just trying to avoid having one of these outbursts from you.
Names. I didn't say who it was. Doesn't matter who it was.
I mean, I'm kind of questioning my sanity here because even though we're only 1 week removed from The Whale, Adam, I thought that you had generally positive feelings towards that movie.
It made me angry. My opening remark was that I expected to not engage with it emotionally, but appreciate it as like a stylistic exercise. But on top of my not engaging with it emotionally, it upset me and made me angry. Was my big picture take home.
The performances of the individual actors in The Whale, nothing else, were, you must admit, barely.
Brendan Fraser, great. Love Brendan Fraser. He did a great job.
Yeah.
Other people, varying degrees. I think that like Brendan Fraser is great in that. I love Brendan Fraser. He's an inherently intensely emotional actor, and it's he's great. I think that like Tar is just operating at a different level of complexity and subtlety that I find more thought provoking and makes me engage with more emotionally.
I would agree with that. And the analogy I would paint is like you're trying to compare a Mahler symphony to a AC/DC classic. Like honestly.
How much I love AC/DC.
No, but you love it for different reasons, right? I mean, you go see it.
The joke is I don't like AC/DC.
But that's real awesome.
I happen to like both AC/DC and Mahler, and just like Lemonade and Ribs, I don't feel the need to compare them. They're different types of artistic experiences. I think Mike already said that. You don't go see if you're in the
I'm glad we watched both, and now that I've said my provocative attempt to get everybody's adrenaline going, we can now open the debate of the minutia of the movie.
You're not going to get my goat.
The well, I do need to,
goats out here.
I do need to have a quick callback though, because I believe I can't remember which podcast it was, but this was the Legend of Bagger Vance podcast. We asked the question, which movie would you rather watch again, The Legend of Bagger Vance or Ordinary People? And I think we all agreed that we'd rather watch the Legend of Bagger Vance. And I guess a question here then too, you could ask the same one, like what would you rather watch again, The Whale or Tar? And I think in this one, I think for me, there's no question that I would rather watch Tar again on this one. And I will say, one element of it as well is that there are I think some details of the movie. There are a lot of like details that are layered into the movie that don't really make sense, or you don't really understand that they are important until you've actually seen the whole movie. For example, at the very beginning of the movie, after the credits, you have Tar who's like sleeping on the plane, and then you have like the live video with like the messages that are being sent, and you don't have any context. You don't really understand what's going on there. And then you also have like the emails from her student that they were deleting, and you could actually see the inbox, and you could see a lot of the lines that you have on there. So like when you see the movie, you understand those. Like I would definitely want to watch that again, just understanding that, so I can actually piece that together. So I think that's an area like with the Whale versus Tar. I mean, the Whale, I think like what you see is what you see. I don't think there's really necessarily more to it. Whereas I think with Tar, you can watch it multiple times and kind of get a bit of a different story. It's like the movie Clue in that sense.
Imagine if it was like the movie Clue, where when they put it out at theaters, there are 4 different endings, and different theaters got different endings. Like in one ending, she never gets in trouble, and she's just an even bigger success, and people are like, "What are you talking about?" One thing I will say, so after I saw it the first time, a thing I saw that made me immediately want to watch it again a second time that I hadn't noticed, even though I saw it in a theater and was paying full attention, is there are 2 instances where you see Krista, the student who kills herself, in the background of shots where she couldn't be there. The first is right before they find out she killed herself, and Tar is grabbing her like score for the 5th off the shelf. She's standing behind her at the piano where she could not possibly be. And the second is when her daughter wakes up crying and she rushes into the room to see what's wrong with her. Krista is sitting in the shadows of the corner of that room. Also, this is after she's dead. There's no way she could be there. And because someone was like, well, this kind of opens it up that this movie, although I absolutely disagree with someone that wrote an article that thinks that there's some people think that after she hits her head, none of that's real, it's all a dream. I don't think that's true. I think that's stupid and doesn't make sense. But the fact that Krista is in the background of 2 scenes where she couldn't possibly be and isn't even noticed by Tar, at least opens it up to a thing I like in movies, which is that it's not supposed to be just purely reality, that there's like impressionistic flourishes that are representing either someone's interior mental state or some other not just surface level thing that's happening that makes you think about other things that happen in the movie. And then when you go see it a second time, like Mike was talking about, the first scene is the texting and she's asleep. After the credits, the first scene is the NPR talk. And what you would have no way to know the first time you see it, because you don't know what Krista looks like or anything about Krista, you're seeing the back of Krista's head at the NPR talk. And then at the hotel, before the book is delivered, you're seeing her in the foreground of the street. So she's in the whole movie before you even know who she is, because they're showing that she's like stalking her up until her suicide.
So I didn't see that as well. It it kind of it kind of reminds me, like, do you remember the Too Many Cooks Adult Swim video? And then where like if you watch it again, like the murderer is actually like in the background, a lot of the early shots, but you just don't see them.
It's probably Tar is probably referencing Too Many Cooks. It's a very influential work of art that everyone's trying to emulate for their Oscar movies.
Yeah, but there was on the part of like what is actually happening. I want to go in just real quick. You mentioned the whole like dream sequence thing. I that is a level of like analysis or whatnot that like just makes me very annoyed when I see that. I don't know if you watched Breaking Bad at all, the entire episode, the entire series. Are you familiar with it?
Because absolutely.
Yeah, because like there are some people that are like, oh, the final episode was actually the Walter White dream sequence, and like he's actually still in
Yeah,
the house.
no, people, because that's happened a couple times, people love to think that. But to me, that's as stupid as that makes the whole thing uninteresting. To be like, well, that's not even real. I think it's much more interesting to portray things that aren't real, that are indicative of something that you can't show physically, like someone's interior mental state or some other emotional factor.
Yeah.
That's more interesting than like, well, it's a dream. It's like, great, it's a dream. Who cares? It's not even real.
Yeah. That is, yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I do have a couple things though. Actually, on the whole part of her of Tar with build off what you're saying about Chris is like kind of like hovering around in the background, and there's the whole thing like with the metronome, for example, and there are some things where I have some open questions like what's going on there, like with the metronome. So this makes me question: was the metronome even there at all? And I mean, part of me was like, was her assistant Francesca, which is of course the name of Saul's assistant in the better Breaking Bad universe, which I made that connection there. So a good name for assistants, I guess, who kind of reluctantly go along with the kind of tyrannical nature of their bosses. But
probably also a reference to Breaking Bad. Too many cooks, Breaking Bad. These are the influences the top field is working with.
Yeah. I think there are some Smile references in there as well that I can think of.
The people, whenever someone smiles,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're possessed by a demon whenever they smile.
Exactly. But like the metronome, I was thinking like, was the metronome put there by Francesca? Like, did she like break into the house to try to mess with her? Like, is it even there? I mean, that's or like is it like a
opinion,
thing? Yeah.
There's one of two things. One is it's like paranormal and somehow Krista's like spirit somehow did it, or that it's not real and like she did it or she's hallucinating it in her like paranoid delusions of guilt over what happened with Krista. Because also there are other examples of things like what you're talking about when she goes in her daughter's room and she sees stuff arranged in like that pattern that was drawn in the book that was a gift to her. What I'm talking about? And then she like you can see she recognizes it and is like, well, why would my daughter wouldn't know that? Why would it? It's related. All we know is it's something related to like the trip that her and Krista and the assistant took with like whatever the tribal people that we're hearing a field recording of at the start. Because that also is like, yeah, who did that? Did the daughter do that somehow? Like the way she reacts to it, that means like someone's been there or it's not real and it's just her hallucinating or having paranoid delusions.
Yeah, and this does like tie back to the question of like the whale versus Tar, and like these are things like just like rewatching the movie, keeping an eye on these details. I think is you can there are multiple lenses you can watch that through. And I mean I guess like with the metronome, you maybe perhaps that's some sort of like metaphor for like the loss of control, where she's at the beginning, she's talking about like her right hand and like how she's in control, and like she's when she's talking to the student, which of course we want to get to that in a second, but like she's talking about how like he's a robot, like with his opinions. So that I could see the metronomes kind of being like her own prison, which would make sense that was just totally something that she made up in her mind.
Another thing I didn't notice the first time I watched it is, there's all her having the second apartment to like write in undistracted is a key part of the plot. And when her mentor guy like asks her how the writing is going, and she's like, oh, that's like asking how the shitting is going. Like it all just comes out as pastiche. But then the funny thing is knowing that she's self-conscious about whatever creative, because she talks a lot about like the role of the conductor, but like obviously because she's trying to write her own music, there is a significance to trying to like write her own stuff besides conducting, and she's self-aware of like not just ripping other people off. But then when she's sitting there, she comes up with nothing, and then the first thing she writes is she's just transposing the medical alarm from her neighbor, which she doesn't know what it is. She doesn't know what it is until later. But we know when you watch it the second time, that weird beeping that she plays on the piano is her like elderly neighbor's medical alarm, and that's what she uses. And then the other funny part is how self-conscious she is about it being her own creative thing. Then the second instead of this, she just like changes the notation and then immediately dedicates it to her daughter, even though she's doing it because the lady she has a crush on suggested it. So to me, it's also because like the thing with her neighbor and clearly how disgusted she is with like an old person dying, that she like, it's just, it's ironic that she ends up as her own thing, transposing the medical alarm, not knowing it until later when like she actually has to go help the lady. It was a thing that, you know, I enjoyed rewatching it.
How many times have you seen Tar?
Just two. I thought about doing a third, but I got distracted. So that's another way I'm just flying like a loose cannon on this one. Haven't seen it in like 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no Skinamarink.
Have you seen that yet? Did you go see that?
I'm not. I'm going to see that on Monday night though. It's the Grand Illusion. So
I'm the third time tonight, playing at a different theater in town now.
So
I will tell you right now, I actively don't want to do a podcast on that, because if you just put Skinamarink in YouTube, there's way too many videos. The most I've self-harmed in my life was starting to watch YouTube people talk about Skinamarink, which there are 500,000 videos with 100 million views of people saying the dumbest shit. And I actually like watched it for like 10 minutes and had to just like go sit in a dark corner and just like sigh deeply and vow never to watch YouTuber stuff again. But anyway, my point is the internet is too polluted with Skinamarink takes. So even as much as I would love to talk about it, I don't think we should do a podcast about it.
Fair enough. And I mean, we all know that the movie was just all a dream.
A dog's dream.
Yeah. Evan, so like what do you think of, you just finished watching Tar? Let's do some free association, whether it's a scene, whether it's a line, whether it's a moment. What's the first thing that you think about when you think about Tar?
I don't have anything as sophisticated as you two guys, but I do. I especially like I love anytime a movie goes into a real specific ecosystem or culture of particularly like bourgeoisie elite. Like my closest example is the academics that I often have to talk to and deal with, and a lot of what these folks were talking about reminded me of my little ecosystem. But I find that very interesting and entertaining. It made me want to learn more about that community of ultra elite composers and musicians, and because it's like, you know, there's this whole just sort of galaxy or sort of subsystem of people who are engaging in a way that's quite hilarious and extreme, and I just don't know any. Like I don't know anything about it. But so that intrigued me, and I particularly like the scene in the beginning at the Juilliard School with the commentary on the you know, that the whole like identity, art transcends identity, and the points she was making to this poor student who ended up storming out of the class. And she said something about the narcissism of small differences breeding conformity that I thought was really interesting. Those are my favorite parts. And yeah, I mean, I do wish I had not viewed it amongst the din of the Starbucks, you know, but I had no choice.
This is, you know what, though, that's ultimately, this does show your dedication to the podcast and your dedication to this art form.
Yeah, you're gonna get like a Purple Heart for doing a podcast in a public place. You're gonna get a special epaulette on your shoulder pad for this.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about the scene of Juilliard, because I know that one from some of the I wouldn't say reviews, but like some of the stuff I've read about that, some of the Reddit comment threads, for example, like they focus a lot on that scene. The first question I have is like Bach, like what did he do that was objectionable? I didn't fully catch that, other than like some references to misogyny in the.
But he was a white cis composer who had, you know, views and behavior toward women that was very normal for the time period and culture in which he lived, and that was objectionable to this young man who dismissed the entirety of Bach's library because of his particular a few things about his particular personhood
Mhm.
You know, and that's something I deal with in my job a lot too. Like
Yeah.
somebody look at your syllabus and it's like, wow, there's a lot of white males on the syllabus, and it's like, well, you know, it's the implication is that, well, you ought to force non-white males into the syllabus, regardless of what that means for the content. You know, it's so like the fact that Bach, for instance, had this foundational role in all of Western music is completely thrown out the window because he doesn't conform to this newer ideology of you need to sort of artificially boost and elevate contributions from people in disadvantaged groups.
An interesting thing to me, the most salient point she makes, which is the hardest for anyone to debate, is at the end when she's like to the guy that she's rebutting his ignorance of Bach. She's like, do you want someone listening to your work to care about your identity, or do you want your work to stand on its own? And to me, the funny thing about that is like people, that's a scene that's a very impactful scene, which people like to be like, wow, you know, this is about like, you know, all this like, you know, white privilege, cancel culture stuff, but it's like, and Outlaw Verne is one of my favorite writers. I love Outlaw Verne. Outlaw Verne, if you read enough of his writing, he definitely is farther down the like liberal scale than me in terms of stuff like that. But even people that are way out on that spectrum, anyone that seriously engages with that scene and tries to they acknowledge like, well, she's right. And the only thing they can say is like, maybe she should have been like nicer to the guy about it. Like, I haven't read anyone try and say she's wrong. Because in the end, when she says like, don't you want your own stuff to be judged separate from your identity? And I think secretly some people do want their identity to bolster their work, but you can't say that. You can't say that openly, which is why ultimately no one can really say she's wrong. You can say she was being like unnecessarily combative or antagonistic, which is subjective or whatever. I haven't read even the most like bleeding heart liberal people that are going to like be all for that kind of stuff try and say that the message she has is incorrect. People will just say like, she's being hostile when she doesn't need to be. She's not going to win him over this way. And they're like, that's true, but you know, that's a separate issue.
I do have the Outlaw Verne review of the movie pulled up. So outlawverne.com for those of you listening at home to check it out. And I mean, that's exactly right what you're saying, Adam. And just to quote directly from his review is he has a line in there. Her mistake is that she's just an arrogant fucking asshole. My
point is even someone like Verne or the lady whose review he links to, and then the New York whatever, who also clearly is someone that like is more amenable to the ideas that the student is saying, says like, I mean, she's not wrong. She's just kind of like being, you know, hostile about it, which I think is notable because like a lot of people, when I got interested in watching it, was people arguing whether it was supposed to be an indictment of reactionary stuff as portrayed by her, or whether it's satirical and it's actually the opposing view, which, you know, I don't think it's either. But then when you actually, anyone that's watched it, no one, I've yet to encounter someone that's like, well, that guy was right. Like you can be like, yeah, she was kind of mean to that guy, but no one is like, she's wrong.
Yeah.
I'd love to meet someone. I know they're out there. I would love to hear from someone that straight up thinks she's wrong and hear them make an actual argument against it, because I would be interested to hear it. I don't know it because that's not how I feel, but I was like fishing for it and I couldn't even find it.
If you are a true deconstructionist, which is, I think, that in a certain sense as far left as you can get, you do think that the ethical and even artistically best choice is to cancel or to deconstruct.
Like, what would someone like that say to her endpoint of don't you want your own work to be independent of that identity?
They would say, no, I don't want it to be independent of my identity. I don't want it to
I'm shocked. You're saying you've encountered people that will say that out loud.
Let me so there's one particular person I have in mind who is a good friend, and I can kind of count on her to provide what I take to be the most extreme left view on things. And I asked her, and she happens to be Latinx and I have another son who's of Latinx descent, and I've asked them both. I asked them, first of all, I asked the friend who's not terribly far left. I said, how would you want, because this is a person who's applied for lots of prestigious awards and jobs. I asked, would you want your race, ethnicity to be taken into consideration? Would you want it to give you a leg up, an advantage in the job market or on these applications? He said, no, I want to get there on my own steam. The other one, who is a faculty member in our department, also Latinx, said, absolutely. I think it's absolutely appropriate that I should be elevated to the top of the pile based on my background. So people do differ. Although I think that's an absurd proposition. It is very much, you would be surprised. I mean, that's one of the things, like, even the most radical, outrageous idea that kind of were portrayed in this movie, that's real. I mean, there's something like 75-80% of faculty at major universities identify as Marxist or something like that. So this is a real thing. I mean, I think that the young man's stance is becoming the dominant one in lots of elite academic, social, and artistic circles. And I think the movie was kind of trying to point that out.
Yeah, I was shocked when I was then reading about it. I was looking for someone who feels that way to talk about the movie, and I couldn't find it. I found people on social media giving like a one sentence, "This was a stupid movie advocating bad ideas," but that's not. I want someone actually doing a formal argument against what she's saying, and I couldn't find. I believe you. I know you're right, but I was like, show it to me. I want someone who's into the movie to like have their reason why what the guy's saying, because he doesn't. He just walks out. He's like, you're a fucking asshole, and he leaves.
I think you'd find no shortage of people who would defend his position. Come over to UNC in Chapel Hill. I'll introduce you to someone.
I mean, I'm in Vermont. They have to be here. They have to be out here.
Yeah, I think there's lots.
For that scene, so there, I have a read on this the scene, and I want to run it by you to see if this is accurate of my sense here. So I think when I look at that, like the movie, especially taking into consideration the entire story here. So in that movie, you have like the very clear power dynamic of Tar being this world-renowned guest lecturer, expert at Juilliard, and then you have a student who's like very clearly like, she asks him like, why are you at Juilliard, and he doesn't even really give like a very compelling answer to it. So like kind of a young kid who like has ideas, but like naturally you can tell that like he hasn't really like fully fleshed them out. And you have Tar, who's like, I've thought about like, this is my life and whatnot. So through the entire scene, it's like kind of my read on that scene, it's like you have those two dynamics, and it really is just like kind of setting the tone for how she kind of like uses her positions of power to kind of I mean, I wouldn't quite say torment people, but I do think there was an element of that, because with his leg shaking and like she still kind of it's almost like she was like smelling blood in the water and going after him like that. But so that was kind of the kind of one of the readings that I had on that scene, and just wanted to see if you had the same thought, or if I'm missing something.
No, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I when I'm in that situation, which happens at my job sometimes, where my bosses will say something or propose something that I have a strong opinion about, I am, despite my subservient role, I, like Tar, smell blood in the water and can't help myself but like to say, really, like, be like, that's people, the problem is people know that I'm like that, and will just kind of like try to like not respond until I like calm down, and have to like write an email where I'm not like, what's the stereotype of me at work is be like, much like me on the podcast. But anyway, my point is, like, Mike is absolutely right, but like I don't think it has to be that way, because I don't think I'm that way in situations like that, which is related to my long-standing reputation as integrity boy.
Yeah. Indeed.
A thing I wanted to talk about, which when I went to go see this with my friend Matt Goen, so I know Evan knows. I don't know if Mike ever met him. A thing we were talking about that neither of us had a hard answer for what we thought. You know, at the end when she goes to the massage parlor and then like discovers that it's like a sex thing and then pukes, we were like, did she really not know that going in, or did she just like get close enough and like freak out about it? Like when she walked in there, do you think she knows that's a sex? Because to me, she's going in and I'm like, oh, she's going in to have sex. So then when she like has that reaction, I was like,
No,
just finally like.
So me personally, as soon as she asked the concierge about getting a massage, I knew that's where the movie was going. Like she was going to find herself in one of these. Where was she? Was she in Thailand?
Somewhere.
I don't think you don't specify.
They don't specify. So it looked to be Thailand, which is pretty much like that. That's the cap. That's that kind of thing, capital of the world. When it comes to like ubiquitous and cheap sex work. I don't get that scene. First of all, the things that didn't make sense about it. The decor and cleanliness of the massage parlor, the spa, there's no way. I mean, unless this was some kind of mega elite, it just doesn't track at all. Like a place like that wouldn't be that clean.
I mean, who knows? I haven't been to. Have you been to a place like that in Southeast Asia? I certainly haven't.
But the other thing is, why would she puke? I don't understand that at all. Like
that's the thing. In the movie, you're kind of like, oh, did she really not know that's what she was getting into? Yeah. But then the other theory is the one that makes eye contact with her when she freaks out and she's like, pick a number, is number 5, which is the number of the Mahler Symphony that she didn't get to complete her cycle of. That's another thing people posit as a reason that she's like triggered and has like a spaz outfit about it. But I'm like, either I personally don't even know if I think she was in denial about that, or if just getting that close to having to directly pay someone for sex made her finally disgusted with her.
I think that's a better explanation than anything else. That this kind of exactly what you said, like after all of that, like now she finds herself in a position where like this is kind of the most readily it's the closest opportunity for that kind of sexual release, and it's shown to her in a way that's very horrifying.
So yeah, like as her wife confronts her with earlier, she's like, all your relationships are transactional. And then it's like, well, whether she's aware of that or not, when she's actually confronted with like, here's some money for some sex, she's like, come on, it's me, Tar here. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. But that actually makes the most sense. Is that it's like the directives of the transaction, because I think that all along, like Tar like knew what she was doing with the students and whatnot. But I at some level she knew what she was doing, but I think that she was lying to herself the entire time, because they're so yeah. Anyway, that to me that gets the Mike seal of approval.
Let's get the stamp out. We need more stamping going on around here.
When she's in the disheveled house at the end, she's hiding out. Is that supposed to be like her family's house? And that's like her brother. And her real name is Linda, so he calls her Linda. So she's changed her name to Linda.
It says it because she looks at the plaques on the wall, and her real name is Linda. And Tar doesn't have the accent on it. Tar is just like Tarr with no accent. Just so both her names have been like artificially affected to be like fancier.
Mm-hmm. And as long as we're talking about that in our text when we were planning this, I made a joke about like how when we have this, I'm going to be reading Evan on Evan. Evan was like, I don't get the joke.
I can't wait for the manuscript to come out. I can't wait to edit a manuscript of Evan on Evan.
Yeah, well, I'd rather be
working on at Starbucks.
I'll tell you what, I'd rather be compared to her than a lot of the other characters Adam stacked me up against in these movies that we've watched. The most glaring offense being Justin Long and Barbarian. I don't understand how you could possibly get that
That's one of the biggest goats of yours I ever got on my goat.
It's never. Every night it keeps me up. I'm grinding my teeth thinking about it. Because let's be clear, in that movie, just to take a quick tangent, he is. You're supposed to see Justin Long as this like totally villainous, greedy, selfish. He's a rapist. Let's not forget that. And his.
No, I wasn't calling you a rapist. You're not a rapist. That was not the specific. It was a overall personality presentation that I was referring to. I was not accusing. I was not trying to cancel you.
I don't know. It'll haunt me till the day I die.
I'm trying to think of other things I wanted to talk about.
Keep going. I got to take care of some.
Okay. Things to this. Oh well, I have a fairly substantial point that I wanted to discuss, but Evan's gone. So I'm just gonna kind of use this as an opportunity to go through some of my lesser notes, which aren't really going to have too much in the way of discussion. I want to know just kind of a sports thing. So Lydia was wearing a New York Rangers hat.
Okay. I'm oblivious. I want to hear your interpretation for why they would pick the Rangers, because that's something I know nothing about that you have insight on.
Yeah. So why would they pick the Rangers on that one? So yeah, when they could pick the Yankees?
What sport is that?
Oh, that's hockey.
Hockey. Wow, that is interesting.
So my first thought on why you'd pick something, and I'm coming at this from like the perspective of a sports fan. There are actually a couple ways of doing this. Is that a sports fan would be, hey, like I'm a Packers fan, so if I'm making a movie, if I can have somebody like wearing a Packers hat or like a Packers sign in the background, kind of want to add that in there as a bit of an Easter egg. At the same time, like maybe you have maybe you're like a New York Islanders fan, so you hate the Rangers, or like a New Jersey Devils fan, so you hate the Rangers, and you're like, I'm going to have them wearing a Rangers hat out of spite for the team. So I would be kind of thinking about it from that from the sports fan's perspective. Now, in terms of like metaphors, like how the New York Rangers as their team and their history as a metaphor for tar and whatnot, there's no obvious comparison. That would.
Are they a good team? Are they a bad team? Do they get to whatever hockey finals are?
I mean, yeah, they're. I mean, historically going way back, they're like one of the original NHL teams, and like over the last 20, 30 years, I mean, they've been good. I mean, they haven't been, they haven't been great, but it's not like something where if let's say the Chicago Cubs before they won the World Series. And they have all of these years of failure. So like let's say it's a different movie and she's a down on her luck composer and she just can't ever get the big breakthrough and she's wearing a Cubs fan hat, you'd be like, yeah, there's some thematic similarity here. I don't think there's anything with the Rangers outside of, I think maybe the gaffer was a Rangers fan and they're like, hey, here's a hat to wear.
You don't have a take on what the deeper meaning was of the Rangers hat.
Yeah, there's nothing that can obviously think of.
Until you told me, I didn't even know what sport it was. My only theory would be to try and emphasize her credentials as a U-Haul lesbian. Maybe they were like, hockey, that's a lesbian sport for you. We don't need none of that fancy pants.
Yeah, what is? I'm not. What is U-Haul lesbian? What the fuck? What does that mean?
Like a butch kind of like utilitarian, not femme lesbian.
Why is that associated with U-Haul?
Because when you think about a dainty lady, she ain't loading the U-Haul. She's having some dope do the manual labor for her. But I wanted to say, now that Evan's back, sports related. Because if we're going to have one thing on other people talking about tar, we're going to be the people that talk about sports the most. I don't know if you guys know this, because if you just do a little Wikipedia scroll, you can discover it. Todd Field, the director of the movie, most notable as an actor for being Nick Nightingale, the piano player in Eyes Wide Shut before he became a director. A thing I didn't know until people discovered it reading about him in the lead up to this movie. When he was a child, he was a ball boy for some baseball team. And in his relation as a ball boy in that team, him and a player on whatever team, I don't remember, you have to look it up, in his family's home kitchen, invented Big League Chew Like the director of this movie was involved in the invention of Big League Chew, and only just this past week, when he went on like Mark Maron or something, did someone be like, "Hey, what's up with the Big League Chew shit?" And he was like, "Yeah, I was a kid. Like, I didn't get any of that money," which is crazy.
Well,
To
that's
think
very
of you in the
significant.
kitchen being like, "Here's some fake tobacco gum for the baseball boys."
That's
Some other guy
significant.
copyrighted it, made $1 million, and he's got to make movies for a living.
Well, I happen to know that Big League Chew is someone on this podcast's favorite food.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of Big League Chew. I'm not. Yeah,
Right.
Well, you can thank the
about that.
director Todd Field for creating it for you.
No lies. Yeah, no lie on that. And like the the classic, like bubblegum flavored Big League Chew, that's great. But the grape flavor is one of my favorite. I mean, it's love the pouch, love the shredded presentation there. It's great. And yeah, I was looking this up because it was the Big League Chew. It was Rob Nelson of the Portland Mavericks, and then Jim Bouton, who I believe it's the same Jim Bouton who like wrote a baseball book called like Ball 4, which is like in the canon of like baseball books as like the top one. Played for the Yankees in the '60s. So yeah, I didn't know that. That is excellent trivia that you only get from movie
Well,
podcasts.
I only got it because other people were talking about it, but not everybody knows. It's important to know.
Yeah, we're gonna edit this one out and like leave this bit only for the Patreon
I
subscribers.
was gonna say that this is the point where the listenership drops from like,
Yeah, well, you know what? Fuck
Or
them. That's
to-
what I say. They don't know shit.
I do have I have one smaller thing I want to discuss before I get to kind of a more substantial scene. Is that at the end, near the end of the movie, when she gets removed as the conductor, but then she's like in the back, and then she storms out and she attacks the conductor and like punches him in the face. I thought the like that face punch, like the way that was filmed, like particularly the sound of that, I felt that one very, very viscerally. And I was thinking about like what are other blunt trauma blows to the face that have happened in previous movies that I thought like were just like really like visceral and like kind of like make you flinch when you watch them. There is one that actually comes to mind, and I just want to see if either of you can guess which one that I'm thinking of.
Punch to
yes,
the face.
Major Payne.
Yeah.
Is it Major Payne?
It's not Major Payne. It is the scene in Terminator 2 when Sarah Connor is escaping, and then she breaks out and she has like the broken wooden stick, and she whacks the guard in the face.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot that, but now that you describe it, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I would never have remembered that, but that is a good one.
Yeah, there's like so that one, which is a little bit different, but in terms of that, and I will say to credit the movie, and this does talk about the quality of the movie, is that when she attacked him, like when you watch like movies like Rocky and he's getting punched in the face, like I've never like felt a punch the same way that I did of her. And it's also established in the movie, like with the boxing that she did, and like the running, that she's very much in a very like athletic person. So okay, I want to discuss that.
That scene you're talking about is another scene which people posit indicates that not everything we see is intended to be direct reality, because you see her sneak out of the bathroom is the start of that scene. Everyone sees, you see her sneak out of the bathroom, but then in the opening of the scene, she's standing right next to the trumpet guy backstage around a bunch of other backstage people. And if you are aware of what's going on, which we aren't as viewers of the movie, if you know she's been ousted, no fucking way would anyone let her in the building, which is why she'd be hiding in the bathroom. But it's like, it's kind of unbelievable that she would be standing backstage next to musicians and backstage people that would know she's not supposed to be there, just casually waiting to rush out and attack the guy, which, as you're saying, is also filmed in a much more kind of intense, impactful way than the rest of the movie, which is another thing that people posit, she may not have literally done that. That might be her like rage fantasy that didn't actually come to reality, because like she probably would have had a restraining order on her and they would have caught her before she got that close.
Yeah,
but it's a great scene.
But it seems to me that like if that were true, I understand that, but if that were true, they would have done something a little bit more direct to indicate that was part of why she hit her face.
What do you mean?
There was nothing. Well, again, and I watched it at the goddamn Starbucks, so don't I could have missed some shit. In fact, I'm sure I did, but she hits her face, she comes out of that. I didn't get anything from that whole event in the film that was supposed to suggest that she may be hallucinating. You know what
No,
I
and I'm
mean?
not saying, I'm saying none of it do I personally think is a dream or like an
Right.
actual mirage hallucination. I'm saying because of the stuff where you see Krista in impossible things and stuff that happens at her house that is impossible, that some of it is just kind of like not meant to be like a thing that happened or even a thing she hallucinated, but just kind of like, you know, like I said, either there are scenes of paranoid delusion or in that scene, a kind of like wrathful fantasy that didn't actually come to fruition. And who, and it's completely, there's no right, no, I can't, there's no way for me to say that that's true or right. That's just a thing that I found interesting to think about upon rewatching it.
But in that scene, she eventually gets like restrained and like removed from the from the concert hall. If I'm
Yeah.
remembering
And then what
correctly.
happens in
She gets
between?
tackled by like 10 people.
Yeah,
Right.
which I was gonna say, which
Like,
what
World Wrestling Federation match.
yeah, which is
And
yeah,
then what
which is
happens?
Like, imagine the kind of people that would be at an event like that, and then imagine 10 of them tackling her.
yeah. But the other part too is like if this is like a revenge fantasy, like why would it end with you like being attacked and like restrained? Like wouldn't it end with you just like punching everybody in the face and just like blood, like basically like in the movie Drive when he's in the elevator and he's just like, you know, when he's like just stomping that guy's face. Like wouldn't isn't like that how it would end if it was
You know, maybe that would have been a little over the top for everything else in Tar if she actually like busted people's heads open, heads are just exploding. I mean, maybe when the director's cut comes out on home video, it'll be much gorier.
Yeah. Well, so after that scene, she goes to Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And what happens in between there? That seemed totally disjointed to me.
Oh no, yeah, actually no, I can't remember if it's there's several scenes where she's like meeting with a new agent and they're like, well, you know, we're gonna just try and find some stuff for you. And then like apparently the thing she gets booked for is that, which is the best they could do for her at that stage in her career.
The Thai symphony conductor of whatever town, and that would now tell me for the love of God, why is the audience wearing costumes?
Because the music, and I would not know this myself. This is something I got from reading about it. What I got in the theater first time watching was this is some fucking like anime cosplay convention that she's playing music from some shit like that. Having read about it, it's actually for a video game series called Monster Hunter, which is, you know, pointedly relevant to the plot of the movie. But like that text scroll and the music she's playing and the costumes people in her, because from the video game series Monster Hunter, notably recently adapted by Paul W.S. Anderson with Mila Jovovich in a movie of the same title, which I greatly enjoyed a couple years ago.
Interesting. So the movie is saying that, okay, she gets this job going to conduct a live orchestra version of the music from a video game, and the people paying to see this are going to be in costume because they are video game cosplay people.
Yeah, I think the point is that video games and people in costumes is as low culture as you can get when people still play instruments in any
That's
context.
awesome. I love that. Okay, yeah, that thank you. Yeah, so she is the monster and she's been hunted. And now she's doing this as her prison, her capture has led to this. Okay.
yeah. And there is one thing too, and this I got this from a Reddit comment that I was reading about this as well, is that what the Redditor was explaining is that when she's like putting the headphones on for that one, like when you have the symphony for something like Monster Hunter, like the timing is like predetermined. So it's not like, you know, she can, you know, yeah, it's not like she has any autonomy. So like in that case, like she basically is functioning as a metronome.
Yeah. You have to sync up with the projected stuff from the game or whatever.
Yeah. So there's that. I wanted to.
Another thing where when you see it the first time, you don't appreciate how funny it is in the first scene when she gets there and she's like, I looked for the score in the library and they didn't have it. It's like, of course they didn't fucking have it. It's a video game, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, well, there's also the scene when she's like, so when she's like talking to the orchestra and she's like, so what does this mean to you?
What's the composer's
intent with this piece?
That's really great. Well, that adds a lot to the last scene. I didn't know
Yeah.
what was going on there. Okay. I also like the idea of her being you know, we're supposed to think of her as a monster.
Well,
Is that-
that's subtextual.
Yeah, but I like that. So thinking back, you know, Kate Blanchett is, I mean, like most people, I think she's great, whatever. But one of the reasons why I think she's great is that she can make that transition from elegant and angelic to terrifying very quickly, which I think was most obviously done in The Lord of the Rings, whichever one, where she goes dark on young Frodo. And you know, I love seeing that come out in her other movies. I was trying to think of what other Kate Blanchett films.
Yeah, me too. I've seen very few of them. I can't
Right.
even remember what I realized was, I think, like The Talented Mr. Ripley or something. I've seen very few movies she's ever been in.
Well, the other one that really stands out is Notes on a Scandal with Judi Dench.
I for sure don't know that one.
You ever seen Notes on a Scandal?
No, sir.
I thought you were a movie guy.
Have you seen it,
I
Mike?
know. Fake holder.
Shit.
I have not know.
That's pretty rare, folks, for the audience to have a movie that I have seen and not the other two. That was actually a big deal when it came out. It was.
That's the thing. She's in a lot of critically acclaimed, successful movies
Yeah.
that are like period pieces or some kind of shit that I don't give a fuck about.
I'm getting this I'm getting this pulled up on IMDb. So apparently she played Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator.
Another movie where I was like, I cannot be bothered to watch.
Yeah. And she was a narrator on a Frontline documentary. So there we go.
Well, I think you would like Notes on a Scandal, Adam. I don't. It's pretty inoffensive.
I mean, I will say, after this movie, I have a desire to go back and watch more movies she's in for sure. So
She was in
maybe
Night
I
of
will.
Cups. There we go.
Oh yeah, but I mean, we saw that together, right? I couldn't fucking tell you anybody in Night of Cups.
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah, Night of Cups is Terrence Malick, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's a movie where I've seen that. I remember nothing about that movie.
I remember you eating popcorn better than anything in the movie.
Yes, no, that is in fact all that I remember, because in that movie, like I wanted, like, not only was it like popcorn, but I think I also had some, like, gummy worms or something I wanted to eat, and there was like no natural time for me to open it without like making a
Yeah,
crinkling
it's all
sound.
quiet, whispering.
Yeah,
I like the idea of Mike going into the theater for a very dark, serious, experimental movie.
That's the funny thing. It's not even dark and serious. It's like very lyrical and like elegant.
Holding a big
Which is
jumbo
funny.
cinema cup of Pepsi with and a 6-foot gummy rope.
Yeah,
Tied
through by the foot.
through by the foot, like kind of hanging off his shoulders, and like a big jumbo tub of
yeah. Well, you're forgetting the babes that I'm with too, by the way.
the
The
babe.
babes that I'm with. You're forgetting about that.
2 babes, one on each arm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A blonde one and a brunette one.
No black
I-
one, though.
Something I wanted to ask. Okay, too. This is actually kind of also continuing with our exploration of like what is real, what's going on in the movie. Is the scene when she's with Olga, the cellist, and she's driving her back to what she thinks is her apartment. And then she leaves the bear, and then like she like runs into the place, which is kind of like I don't even know how you describe it. And that is a scene which I did not fully understand what was going on. There are a few things to unpackage there, but one of them was like, was Olga actually like living somewhere in there, like a basement room? Is that the implication? Or is it something where it's like she didn't, she was a little, maybe she just didn't want to know where Lydia lived. So she's like, hey, just drop me off here. Or like, she was keen on Lydia, so she didn't want her to know. I mean, that's the kind of thing I wasn't quite sure. Like, does she actually live there? Or was it kind of like a bit of a ruse so Lydia wouldn't know where she lived? Or is it all a dream sequence? I don't know.
And also, yeah, it's like, is the dog real? Did a big black dog scare her in a wet basement? Is that real? That scene is the most, besides the overt dream sequences, which there are like 2 of that are filmed through like weird mirror vision, like warped glass vision. That scene is the most like evidence that it's not reality. Because yeah, you're right. It doesn't make any sense. She's gone instantly. She was only like 10 feet behind her, but she's just gone. And then like, yeah, there isn't even like a place where people would live. It's just like a wet concrete basement. And like, I believe there's an earlier scene where they're like, she asks her and she's like, oh, I'm staying with friends or something. Like what her description of where she's living doesn't match up with that at all. And that whole scene is, I think, the impetus for people having theories about like whether what we're seeing is reality or not, because that scene is so kind of like not seemingly doesn't make sense. But obviously some part of it is real because she really fucks her face up one way or another. Which that's another funny thing, because in the scene when she's being combative with the student, Vern quotes it. She says she has some line about like weaponizing victimhood, but then like when she falls down and hits her face, she like pulls a Jussie Smollett and is like, "Oh, I was attacked. Well, you should have seen the other guy." But it's like, you fucking fell. But like she'd rather invent that she was attacked than admit that she just like stumbled and fell, if that's even what really happened. But it's like a notable instance of like direct hypocrisy from her stated values, that she instantly is like, "Oh, I was attacked. Don't worry about it. I can handle myself." But she's like, "No, you fell," if what we see is reality. But
yeah, Evan, what's your take on that?
I think this had to do with the background noise, but I thought that she had dropped off the cellist at some concert or party that the cellist had invited Cate Blanchett to, and she declined. So I thought she was going in trying to find their concert. I didn't know that was supposed to be her apartment. And I think that the whole like, I hadn't thought about the weaponizing victimhood part, but it seemed like you're supposed to experience her descent into madness, kind of going into full force with that scene.
because also it's up until that happens, when she forgets the bear, that's the most you're like, oh, are they finally going to have sex? Did she leave the bear on purpose to give her an excuse to come in her apartment? But then it like goes the opposite of that. Like up until you see how fucked up the place is, I was like, oh, here we go, she's finally going to do it. And then like the complete opposite happens, and it seems like that's a turning point in the whole thing for sure.
And to tie a couple of ideas together here is that, so we mentioned earlier on like throughout the movie there are like those like text threads that we're seeing, like the videos that are being taken of Tar on that one. My interpretation of that is like somehow Francesca and Olga are like in cahoots on this. Like they somehow off screen, like we didn't see that. And like it's those two that are they're communicating. And
that never occurred to me. For sure, Francesca, but like I think like based on Olga's reaction after the news comes out and she has that meeting, like, you have to at least tell me what's going on. I think if Francesca was texting her the things she's texting, she would have had that confrontation earlier in the movie. Because if she's getting the text from the start, she said she already knows what's going on, which in that case, why would she be as upset as she is when she finds out via like the news that she brought the cellist with her, you know? Mm-hmm. I don't know who I think. In the early scenes, I thought it was Krista until Krista is dead. And then it's like, well, who knows? It's somebody else.
Yeah. Or I guess is it even happening at all?
I often hallucinate text messages. I have these hallucinations that Mike sends these angry masculine text messages in the group text. Is it a dream?
I have a so I want to read a headline here from Variety to a article that I have not read at all, so I cannot comment on what the argument is. But I did come across this, and the article it says the question, the headline is Tar rooting for or against Cate Blanchett's superstar Predator conductor?
Neither, and I think anyone that thinks it's one or the other is an idiot.
To put it lightly, let's not pull punches here.
And that's exactly why it's a more interesting movie, because you're like, when she's talking shit to the student, you're like, woo, go Lydia. And then when she's like being a narcissistic jerk, you're like, come on, Lydia. And then at the end, you're like, I don't know about this Lydia character. And that's That's, to me, that's a much more accurate representation of like the kind of, you know, troubles that people cope with than The Whale having like, well, each person has one obsessive bad thing that they repetitively do their whole life, and then you die.
Yes,
I
but
feel
as
like it's more like
Maestro,
Tar, where everyone does have problems, and sometimes you do better than others, and sometimes you're not as aware that you're fucking up as others.
as Maestro Mike pointed out, the Whale is of a certain style that it is supposed to have very focused one-dimensional character arcs, whereas this is a big fat ocean of a movie in Tar that's supposed to have lots of complex threads weaving around together in different ways. So it's just not the same kind of.
Yeah, I know. I mean, obviously, I'm being facetious. On me being honest for 1 second in my pathetic life, what it really is the same reason I'm going to see Skinamarink a third time, which is I see too many movies. If you see like 10 movies in a year, you just want to like experience some human emotions and be like, wow, I kind of related to that or whatever. That's normal. I see 100 million movies and I'm like, I actually made a joke about this recently. Where and this is actually this is unrelated to what we're talking about, but I don't remember the context. I offhandedly made an allusion in my workplace to tentacle porn. If I say tentacle porn, I know Evan knows what I'm talking about. Mike, do you know what I'm referring to, even in the loosest sense?
I do not.
Okay, this is what I've discovered. Everyone was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" I was like, you know, when like in anime porn, when the monster tentacles rape the ladies, and people were like, "Why do you know about that?" And they were like, "Is that like one weird thing?" And I was like, "No, it's a huge storied genre with like a history of auteurs and studios and things like that." And the joke I made, which is relevant to why I prefer Tar over The Whale and why I see Skinamarink 3 times and don't give a fuck about other shit, is like, I was like, well, you know, you get on the internet as a child and you're bored with human sexuality after like a day. And you're like, well, I guess I gotta find some other weird shit. But most normal people are like, hey, I'll watch normal porn. This is all I need to jack off. And I'm like, oh no, friends, I'm gonna watch way too much of it and need some weird shit to even feel anything. And that's why I like Tar. That's why I like Skinamarink, and why I shouldn't be confused at all that people that don't indulge in the things I indulge in obsessively don't share my opinions.
No, but I do think that you have a lot of opinions on this movie, for instance, that are that would be popular amongst the typical moviegoer. And I think this is just an objectively great movie that, you know, and that's something to notice. We tend to always, with the exception of Bagger Vance, we've been on kind of like a let's go see the best movie in the theaters kick, which maybe we should examine that as a bias.
What are the ones you're talking about? I'm struggling. I'm blanking on our own podcast.
Well, we saw, you know, Barbarian.
Oh, yeah.
Which was the talk of the town at the time. I guess that you can't really say that about the Crimes of the Future. That was probably, don't ever read movie reviews, but if I had to guess, I'd say Crimes of the Future probably didn't receive a lot of applause from
it was people. I think the general response to Crimes of the Future, now that we're farther out from it and more people have seen it, is most people are like, yeah, it's okay. Most people seem to think it's a mid-tier Cronenberg. And for sure, people that haven't seen a lot of Cronenberg movies are just inherently going to get less out of it because it's like extremely about his own career and life and the relationship with, you know, what he's done and the society, in a way where if it's the first Cronenberg movie you're going to see, you're going to be like, what is this asshole on about? Why is he so pretentiously he has such significance?
For the record, as much as I love doing like good movies like Tar, my favorite episodes to re-listen to are the ones about movies like Bagger Vance and Major Pain. So
yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I mainly wanted to do one on Tar to make you guys watch Tar because I really like it and want more people to see it. We can delete this for all I care.
Oh no, a lot of people are. Well, I have 3 other people who siphon off my Amazon Prime account who are now, as we speak, watching Tar because I rented it for the 48-hour period or whatever. And so they're all watching it. So that
that's what I care about. This is just for, I like talking to my friends and having people watch movies. They're like, whether this is on YouTube or not is irrelevant to me. Well,
they will be listening to the show and Yeah, they had a lot to say.
And related to successful episodes of the podcast, because I had recently in my YouTube history had the whale episode. When I was looking up a different video on YouTube, number one, I noticed that at least on our Roku TV, if you're on the YouTube app on the Roku TV browsing the Mike's Movie Podcast channel, the name of the show is so long, you can never even see the title of the movie until you click on it. Like, it has the name, the episode number, and then like a ... where you can't see the movie we're talking about. But number two, Izzy had no idea about the inexplicable massive view count for Major Payne, which she was like, "Is that a mistake? Like, what happened
Still
there?"
don't
And we're
know
like,
why. I still don't understand.
"We're hoping lightning strikes again sometime."
Yeah, I mean, it must have been like one of those, Cinema Sins everything wrong with Major Payne must have come up at the exact same time that we released that.
Yeah, no, I still don't know because I've tried to play around with the little hashtags to get more, but
I'm loving the yawning. I'm loving the hood. I love that you're
Well,
outside. This is
you know what
great.
happened? My earpods died, the battery died because I already watched the whole movie and done half the podcast with my AirPods and they ran out of
The
batteries.
public is hearing this now.
Everybody else,
Hello, public.
we're out here naked, guys. And it's not very warm out today. So I'll be looking forward to getting back into my nice warm BMW.
So
Can you remember what kind of car does Justin Long drive in Barbarian?
It's not that kind of BMW. No.
But yeah, I think in general, I agree with Evan. I would love for Evan to propose a movie in that spirit for a subsequent episode.
Well, what I was thinking was, who has a ton of movies that would make good fodder for that would be Brendan Fraser, especially his early and mid 90s work. So we mentioned the Scout, but there are also others like I think Dudley Do-Right.
Dudley Do-Right has been a Penis Boys screening. I don't know if you were at it, but that has been in the third story apartment.
Well, I would not put it past me to forget if I was at it. So that could be. Anyway, those are just some initial thoughts. I mean, we can, of course.
No, I would love any Brendan Fraser movie. I'm down. I've never seen The Scout. Would love to watch The Scout. I would love for you guys to watch Monkey Bone. It kind of blows my mind you guys didn't watch Monkey Bone when it came out.
We could do
I
that.
think you guys would love Monkey Bone. Monkey Bone is one of the most retarded movies of all time.
That does sound good. I mean, the Scout also works with our baseball. We do,
Yeah.
we have a history of doing shitty kid baseball movies. So
well, you're clearly not talking about Little Big League because that's a good movie.
Also, I highly recommend, because people were talking about the whale, someone linked to the Jiminy Glick interview with Brendan Fraser from back when that was a show, and it's only like 5 minutes and very funny, easily accessible on YouTube for some Brendan Fraser adjacent content.
it's been a long time.
Yeah, I can't say that I've ever seen any Jiminy Glick stuff.
It's very funny. Martin Short is a true master. Martin Short is at a Kate Blanchett as the character Tar level of comedy.
Are you a Steve Martin fan as well?
Oh, absolutely. One of the best.
Mhm.
I would say, for me personally, Martin Short over Steve Martin, because Martin Short did fewer like normal feel-good family movies than Steve Martin, who is always great. But there are too many like Parenthood, whatever kind of movies in the Steve Martin filmography, but to Martin Short, who's more reliably in a goofball, zany zone that I prefer.
Yeah, like Clifford.
Exactly.
So I have two quick notes that I wanted to get through here just for to complete as much as we can. Is one, I just wanted, before I forget, is talking about Sebastian, the other conductor, when they were talking about like, oh, Sebastian, it's time to rotate him out. And if I heard it correctly, a comment that was made about Sebastian is that he has an affinity and he collects dead stock pencils. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I think it's cool, to collect those types of things. So I can relate to that. You know,
What do you say about that? Number one, it's extremely funny. That's like the most pathetic nerd loser shit to collect. And I say that as a pathetic nerd loser that collects a lot of worthless shit. That I appreciate it as the target of that kind of satire. That's a really good, like Evan was saying, a super specific, that's real example. That isn't what I'm into, but I appreciate it. Number two, we later see when she's in her house, she also collects dead stock pencils because she opens a cabinet and she has a bunch of weird old pencil boxes. And number three, when she goes to fire him effectively, she casually steals one of his dead stock pencils and sticks it in her back pocket.
yeah.
Wait, was Dead Stock a pencil company?
Dead stock just means either a model that is no longer made or a company that went defunct. Basically, a type of pencil that no one could buy new. That you have to get like an old, unused, someone kept it in a basement for decades. Like someone's like, I only like this 1970s Evan Johnson edition number 5 lead pencil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That is an impressive level of detail, which I actually did. I mean, I did see the pen part. I remember that, and actually I do remember also like she had like the pens in her closet as well. I didn't like put them together as like an intentional through line for the movie. So that is an impressive level of detail. Almost
because in that very scene, in the scene you're talking about, where she is having that conversation with the guy that ends up conducting at the end, she says that thing where she's like, "There's a guy looking at you. Do you want me to like give you some space?" And he says something along the lines of like, "Oh God, please no. There's nothing worse I can imagine than having to be stuck with someone else just like me." Which is funny because she's revealing in her conversation that she is just like the guy they're trying to get rid of, And there's a lot of examples of people pretending that they're not a kind of thing that they secretly are.
This reminds me of what you're talking about. This reminds me of a musical song that was selected in the Ozzy Osbourne draft by me, I believe. I think this would have been in the 3rd round of that, which is "You're No Different" off of the Bark at the Moon album.
Probably another inspiration guitar.
Yeah, that should have been in the credits.
Breaking Bad and You're whatever the Ozzy song.
Yeah, you're no different. Which
imagine if they played that in the end credits. What would you have done in the theater if that song came up at the end credits?
I don't know what I would have done. I think I would have just like been in such a state of blissful happiness. I never would have wanted to leave.
I will tell you, I probably talked about it in the podcast before. The closest I ever experienced that was the first time I rented the Steve Buscemi movie Ed and His Dead Mother from Scarecrow Video and watched it on my couch in my apartment. And when the They Might Be Giants song, Everything Right Is Wrong Again, hits at the end, I literally stood up and screamed involuntarily out of excitement and enthusiasm that song that I love was the climax at the very finale of that movie I had just seen for the first time and also loved. Because, if you know the song, it really hits at the start. It's like, ding, ding. Yeah. And I knew it instantly before the lyrics. And I literally went,
Ed and His Dead Mother was weirdly on Showtime all the time when Nick and I were kids. And so we watched that movie probably a dozen times at least and grew to really love it.
Yeah, I had never heard of it until I lived in Seattle. I don't remember how I came across it, whose filmography I was scrolling. I was completely oblivious to it until I saw that there was a Steve Buscemi movie called that, about that. And I was like, oh, I got to check this out. And of course, it's an incredible, extremely underrated movie.
Yeah.
What was that? What album was that off of?
The self-titled debut.
Okay.
It may even be the first track, or no, it's not the first track, but it's off the first album.
Yeah. And then as Apollo Way, my level of knowledge of They Might Be Giants film discography, Factory Showroom prior is pretty good, but there are some where I have a hard time placing certain songs on certain albums as well. So I need that.
Who are easy to intermix with each other, along with the other EPs that came out around that time.
I have one more note here that I wanted to go over, and that was at the interview at the beginning when the host was talking about people who have won an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, and he's listing off people that won, and he's like, there are 14 people that have done this, and he lists off 4, and the 4th that he mentions is Mel Brooks, and then there's kind of that like like laugh that they had for the crowd. I thought that was like one of the most like perfect like non-jokes or like lame jokes that like people they react to like almost reflexively on that one. And I that's like kind of stuck out where I just like feel like that was like a perfect joke and comment for that of like this New Yorker NPR crowd that just like basically mentioned Mel Brooks and like that gets a laugh from the audience.
I mean, he's a funny guy.
Yeah. You know, yeah. I
Mel
like Mel Brooks too. Go ahead, Devin.
Mel Brooks is to the pretentious, highfalutin New Yorker crowd as Tim Heidecker is to Mike's movie podcast fans.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm making a complex analogy. It didn't
So
quite.
do you think the New Yorker people like Mel Brooks or don't respect Mel Brooks? I can't tell.
Both.
You think they like him but don't respect
They
him?
like him, but they think he's an odd candidate to have won those specific awards.
So then how does that work for fans of the podcast and Tim Heidecker? I feel like we all love and respect Tim Heidecker.
I know, but if you told the fans of the podcast that, you know, Tim Heidecker, oh, well, hey, you know, like great comedian artist Tim Heidecker, who has won a Grammy and an Oscar.
But he hasn't. That's why it doesn't work, because he hasn't won any of those kind of awards.
Maybe I want to say, what's the guy's name? South Park man. Trey Parker.
Trey Parker.
Mhm.
I mean, also, I would think all of our fans hopefully rightfully hold him in very high esteem.
I don't think the New Yorker people didn't like Mel Brooks. They just think he doesn't go with the others mentioned.
Yeah.
Know what I'm
I
saying?
agree with you in that respect, but I'm saying I respect our fan base enough to think they would correctly hold both Trey Parker and Tim Heidecker in the highest of esteems as modern geniuses that have shaped our culture.
You know, I think we're gonna have to set aside another 3 hours next weekend just on this point.
Yeah, I just can't tell you. Do you think that like your brothers don't respect Tim Heidecker or Trey Parker? This is the part of the analogy I
The
don't
thing that
understand.
you always overlook when we get into these debates is that if you are
It's
integrity,
boring.
then I am whatever is the opposite.
I mean, in this case, I'm just literally trying to parse the analogy.
It doesn't make any sense. It was a stupid thing to say, but I'm gonna continue to hammer on it because
I'm distracted. I can't. This lighting, the way your hair looks, the umbrella, this is magnificent. This should be your photo for whatever badge, whatever
Well,
framed.
I told you
award
guys
in. On the back cover of Evan on Evan, I want it to be this image.
what I have not mentioned to you is that not only I'm looking forward to getting into the warmth of my BMW, but that's also my home. I've been homeless for the past 2 months, and so this is how I'm living.
What?
And I go to the Starbucks because it's free water, free Wi-Fi, and I can take a shower in the sink. I take a bath in the sink. But all the bathrooms were busy, so I haven't been able to get in there for my warm bath.
So what you're saying is you're at your Lydia Tarr in Thailand part of your narrative arc right now.
It's exactly what I'm saying. You know, and I fell from such great heights. You know, I was in
Well, you're
action.
always welcome here on the farm. We'll put you to work shoveling the chicken coop.
I hear it's a great place to come and just not do anything. Is that true? I got some instruments. I'm gonna bring my musical equipment and just
I don't know what you're referring to.
I'm gonna contemplate my next steps, you know, but I'm not gonna rush anything.
Well, that's just evidence that what I'm saying is true. It's true for anyone in the Penis Boys Golden Circle.
I want to mention too. I just thinking about this movie. A thought that crossed my mind is that this movie. It's about like composers. It's about classical music. It's about like experts in the field. And we kind of like start talking about like music theory, right? Why was there no Yngwie Malmsteen? He knows everything there is to know about music theory, and he was not in this movie.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I mean.
Of Tar for that be? There's like a version of Tar where it's like an Yngwie analog who's like abusing his power.
No, but that's
Yeah.
back to the point I was making originally. Like Mike and I, and maybe to a lesser extent you, Adam, are like the kind of people who listen to Yngwie Malmsteen unironically. and we like blues, rock, shred guitar, like 90% of the population, but the culture being represented in this movie would not listen to that music. You know, they would think it was just a lark or
Yeah.
a complete joke. And yet, you know, I don't have anything. I love classical music, but like the way that they live it and breathe it, you know, I find that to be very entertaining and special.
Yeah.
You know,
Which I think Evan, I think that also like kind of gets back to a little bit to the comment about like Mel Brooks, where I think like some of that scene there, I feel like there is a bit of like a lack of respect for the like
yeah.
implicit in the reaction there to like what
that's
Mel Brooks.
lowbrow. That's
Yeah.
lowbrow, blue collar humor.
Yeah.
And
when I was scrolling through the YouTube channel showing Izzy the Major Payne view count, I couldn't resist revisiting one of the greatest works of our lifetime, Depresso Sunday. And I always forget, related to the blues, the CD that Shay's listening to at the opening of Depresso Sunday. That part in my memory gets skipped over, but it's very funny where he's like, "It's the worst thing I ever heard. I'm gonna go kill myself."
it's that guy is a real guy, and we all like interact.
What is it? I already forgot from last night. White Africa or something?
Otis Taylor is like, you know, B-level blues musician who's just trying to make it, and he's got a following amongst, you know, the predominantly white middle-aged male blues circuit market. And he was at blues camp with his poor daughter. He brought his daughter, who's a vocalist, our age, you know. And Mike, you remember this? Is this ringing a bell?
It is, yeah, absolutely.
Good. You know what the fans love is the blues camp content. You gotta wait till the end to get the
Boy.
blues camp talk.
Boy, would I love to see that up on YouTube someday. But yeah, no, that's good that that's up there. So, relatedly, this is super boring and not necessary to record, but whatever. I need to figure out a way to separate the Mike's Movie Podcast channel from Evan Johnson. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be, that's my channel that I just renamed MMPC, which was really stupid and shows my grandpa level of understanding of YouTube and various.
I like that. That could be some Tim Heidecker style comedy if you just pretend you did it on purpose.
Well, but seriously though, because, you know, I don't want, for a lot of reasons. One, I just want to keep the things separate. I don't want Mike's Movie Podcast channel to be the thing that I launch on my TV when I want to go watch, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And two,
I don't know why not, but I understand what you're saying.
I don't want my students, part of me doesn't care about this, but like I'd rather not have my students find the.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, you should be able to create a second account.
But then can I transfer?
If I had to do it, I wouldn't know a better way than re-uploading them. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a better way, but I don't know it if there is.
Well, I think what I'll do is I'll sanitize the current channel to just be Mike stuff. And I'll make a new Evan Johnson channel where I put all my weird porno stuff.
Cool.
That's the plan.
Well, I think we have come to the point of this podcast where we must quantify what has happened here so far today. To quantify, to take all the words, all the discussions, and let's distill them down into a quantitative method. And, you know, I was actually debating here just right now, Adam, if I should continue with the tradition. And I was like, should I or should I not? And I decided that I'm going to. As is custom, we will start with you here, Adam.
Better than the whale.
Which is quantitative because it's comparative.
I know. That's why this will be a legendary episode that people will study in the history books.
Right. This is a huge moment when we transition.
This is the dog making me fall down and hit my face of the Mike's Movie Podcast arc of my life.
You know, I'm going to give it 4 veal burgers with a cucumber salad on the side.
Yes. You know what? We didn't discuss that scene, didn't we? So
it wasn't very. I don't think that scene was very important.
It's funny.
It's funny, yeah, but
yeah, I give it. I'm going to give it 2.5.
Yeah, 2 cheeseburgers. Nice. Okay.
No, I think when you talk about comparing it though, it's like, it's like, when you talk about like the whale and you talk about Tar. I mean, it's like comparing, Giannis Antetokounmpo to, Mo Williams. It's just, completely different. No, I will say Tar is a superior movie in quality to the whale. To the listeners of this podcast, I think you should see both of them. And to distill it down, I'm going to give this movie four cheeseburgers. I cannot think of a modifier that would be both appropriate to the movie to add in there, but I'm going to give four cheeseburgers. And for those of us for those of you at home who are so inclined to pay attention to stuff, I think there's a very good chance this will win like Best Picture. I think it's going to beat out Sawdust and Mildew even. And
Is that a real movie?
It's gonna
what,
be,
Sawdust and Mildew?
Yeah.
that's a reference to Naked Gun.
Yeah.
I'm such a fucking idiot. How did I never?
That was a good one, Mike. No, but realistically, I think it will beat The Whale.
Yeah.
Because we want to make clear, like, just because Tar is a better movie objectively than The Whale doesn't mean The Whale is not also a top tier, despite what Adam might think. So it'll beat The Whale because they will both be nominated. Is the point.
And I have not seen the I don't know even who's nominated and what the other performances are, but I mean I would say Kate Blanchett I think would deserve the award there, and even if she doesn't win the award, I think that her performance was top of the class.
I love all the fussy breathing hand stuff, which is like,
Yeah.
It made me want to do it.
Yeah.
Seeing her do that made me want to be like,
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. They already listed the nominees, and The Whale isn't one of them.
Isn't one of them?
it's official. It sucks.
What was that? Brendan Fraser nominated for any awards?
The Whale wasn't nominated, but the number 5 nominee is Elvis.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I haven't seen it. Can't speak to its
I
quality.
mean, it's good. It's fine. Elvis is entertaining, but like, and another one that is on here, Avatar, Top Gun. This sucks.
Are you talking about Best Picture?
Yeah.
So wow. I mean, Top Gun. That was a fun
Hey,
movie,
what?
right?
I enjoyed Avatar more than The Whale.
Yeah. The
Best actor, Brendan Fraser is nominated for The Whale.
Of course.
I'm drawing a blank. I had a point that I had a thought, but the thought just kind of flipped my mind. You mentioned like Avatar, Top Gun. I think there's another movie that you mentioned that you said, because I'm hoping you can say that to jog the memory.
Sawdust and Mildew, I think.
No, it was after Sawdust and Mildew. I was gonna make some comment about movies, and
Well,
I can't remember.
I'm just realizing my laptop is about to die, so just so you have that.
We may lose it. This is a potential lost episode. We did it.
But wait, Evan, before your laptop's about to die, but what were the other movies that you were mentioning outside of Top Gun, Avatar? Because I'm being nagged. This is great content.
I was reading from a list of predicted nominations.
Okay.
The nominations haven't been released. They're coming out on the 24th. But Elvis was on there. The Banshees of Inisherin, which I have heard is good.
Thank you for mentioning Elvis, because I wanted to say one thing. So I have seen Elvis on that one, but I just want to mention I don't know what accent Tom Hanks was doing in that movie.
I don't either. He's supposed to be German, but it's stupid. It's Dutch. He's supposed to be Dutch. His role is really stupid. The kid is good who plays Elvis, but Tom Hanks, no make no sense.
Yeah, and I would say for those of you who have stayed along this long and you're like, hey, should I see Elvis? I'll say, if you like Baz Luhrmann and if you like Elvis.
I don't like Elvis. I do like Baz Luhrmann, and Tom Hanks doing a fake accent is the most appealing thing I've heard about it. That's
okay. In that case, you would love it. I mean, I think like that. I would put that up on your list of movies to watch, because
I also want to see the other big contender for Best Picture, which is that Banshees of Inisherin movie. Farrell.
I was reluctant to see it. I really enjoyed it, and it's a little too like, I should run a little island in a village for me. But the actual movie is very entertaining and very relevant to our male relationships with each other, and it's very funny. Colin Farrell's great. That other guy's great. I enjoyed it. I didn't expect to, but I enjoyed it a lot.
Well,
Make it happen.
The
Next
well,
week, we're doing Skinamarink and the Banshees of Inisherin.
Next week we're doing our Oscar predictions.
A
yeah,
big Oscar.
well, everybody, I think it's officially time, and it's time for this.
Wow, what a strong ending.
Are you trying to play music right now? I'm gonna
All right, thank you everybody for listening to the podcast. This is the SNL music. I am not able to emulate it this time. Thank you for listening. It's been a great show. Want to thank my guest Evan. Want to thank guest Adam here. It's been a great show. Have a great day, everybody.